Right, my name is Neil Graham, this is Simon Roberts. There'll be a few other guys in and out probably as we go through this, and we all help out with our recreational league programme. How many of you guys are first time coaches within our rec league? Almost all of you, okay, perfect. First of all, thank you for stepping up to coach, we appreciate it, and our recreational league is absolutely 100% dependent upon parent volunteer coaches. It's what makes it tick, and without you guys it just simply wouldn't function, and that has been the case since the late 70s when our rec programme first started. So you guys are a huge part of what it's all about. It is hopefully for most kids a fun introduction to the sport of soccer, and as I say, we really appreciate it. Just whilst I do the introduction, this is Justin Farley walking in. I'm sure most of you have been dealing with Justin with your rosters and what have you. And you've coached with us before?
A couple of years ago.
Couple of years ago, okay. All right, cool. So, and how many of you, just out of interest, how many of you think you feel like you don't know a huge amount about soccer? All right, you're fine. You don't need to know anything about soccer to coach soccer at these age groups, so you're in good company. There's many of our parent volunteers over the years step up, and they've never played the sport, they don't know anything about it. It's fine. Well, the idea of this is we're going to kind of take you through a little bit about the club, what we're about, a little bit about age specific coaching for the age groups that you're involved in, which is first and second grade. And then we'll chat a little bit about the logistics of the league and how everything works towards the end. This little slideshow I put together, I'll email it out to everybody so you have it and you can reference it. So I'll try and, in the interest of not keeping everybody here too long, I'll try and get through it as quickly as we can. But there's a couple of slides that have got quite a lot of information in there. So as I say, I'll send it out and you can kind of read that in your own time. So for those of you who feel that you're somewhat new to soccer, these are the kind of key things that we think. And I say this in terms of, I'm obviously not originally from the US. I grew up in Scotland where soccer is the #1 sport by a mile. Everybody there is obsessed by it, versus my experiences, and I've been here over 20 years, but my experiences of being here, I think soccer compared to the traditional American sports, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, they tend to be very coach-orientated sports where the coach is heavily involved, particularly during games. And whether it's calling timeouts, drawing up plays, those kinds of things. In soccer, that really isn't the case. If you were to watch a professional game on TV, the coach sets up his team and works in practice on how he's going to set up for that game on a Saturday, say. But once the game is underway, there's a limit to how much influence that coach can have on the game. It's just the nature of the sport. It's all about the players making decisions whilst they're out there based on what they see happening during the game. It's very instinctive. It's about anticipation. It's about reading the game. There's nothing in soccer where you draw up plays and somebody knows I'm going to make this run and that run and catch the ball and whatever. So it's very different in that sense. And you know, in our league we probably have more female players than male players, but it's close to 50-50. So it's a sport that it doesn't matter your gender, your size. Arguably the best player in the world right now is Leo Messi, who's all of 5'7". So there's no advantage to being 6'10" as there would be if you're playing basketball or maybe football in that sense. And equally, there's many's a game of soccer that I've seen that ends in a 0-0 tie, and it's an amazing game, an entertaining game to watch. It's incredible. Most traditional American sports, there has to be a winner and a loser, and I think some people who are new to soccer maybe struggle to wrap their head around that, but that's just the nature of the sport, and that's how it's always been. So in terms of if you're fairly new to coaching and new to soccer, these are some fairly simple tips that we would suggest. I think a lot of them are very common sense, I would say, but Everyone's definition of common sense is obviously a little different. But in general, I would say the age groups that you're coaching, if you have a rough plan of what you're going to do at practice, and you're dressed like a coach, and you've got your cones and whatnot laid out when the kids arrive, and it smiles and high fives, and the kids are having a great time, that's half your battle right there. So as simple as make it fun, make it enjoyable, make it active, make it everybody involved. At this age, and we'll touch a little bit more on it, the focus is absolutely on two things. One is trying to get them proficient from a technical point of view, i.e. how do they control the ball, can they dribble the ball, can they strike a ball, can they shoot, can they pass, things like that. And then the other is hopefully plant a little seed in their mind where they love the sport and this is something they feel passionate about and really want to get into. The tactical side of things and the formations and all that kind of stuff, you might touch on it briefly at this age, but really you're not going to spend a lot of time on it. It's going to be beyond most of them. There may be a gentle introduction to team shape at some point, but mostly that we should be thinking about the technique and the enjoyment. And technique is really repetition. So we want to be doing things with these kids that involves them touching the ball as often as possible, where they're practicing dribbling, they're practicing turns, they're practicing receiving a pass, playing a pass, taking a shot and goal, that kind of thing. What I will tell you is, so we put these rosters together based on what neighbourhood you live in or where your kid goes to school. And I realise saying this, so I'll come back to this, I missed the whole bit at the start. Just to give you a little backdrop to the club and the scope of the club. So this fall we'll have somewhere just over 2,000 kids playing recreational soccer. And that has probably been the case for the last 30 years within our club. We have this fantastic rec programme which is driven by parent volunteers. We also have a competitive side of the club which has got another, I think, 3,000 or 4,000 players that are playing travel competitive soccer. The club itself started back in the late 70s. Simon's father was actually involved in that way back then, and we were called Arcadia Scottsdale United Soccer Club. Very much a kind of smaller neighbourhood soccer club in Arcadia and Scottsdale. It snowballed and grew from there over the years. Somewhere in the early 2000s we rebranded to Scottsdale Soccer Club. And again, it was very much a Scottsdale community club. And in our games, we've played at Cochise Elementary School for 30-40 years. And then about 6-7 years ago, when we got a professional team here in Phoenix, Phoenix Rising, the ownership group of Phoenix Rising, as part of their bid to join the MLS, the Major League of Soccer, they needed a youth component to their operation. And so they had two choices: either find an existing youth club to merge with, or start from scratch their own youth program. As it happened, several of the Phoenix Rising owners had kids already in our club, and so they approached and said, would you guys be interested in merging? And it actually took a long time. I think it was about 9 months of talks backwards and forwards to figure out how it would all work. And finally we got to a point where we rebranded as Phoenix Rising Youth Soccer Club. And so now we've got Phoenix Rising branches that are in Glendale, Cave Creek, Anthem, Chandler, Prescott. So all around town, and the ultimate goal is to basically for every kid in metropolitan Phoenix to have a Rising experience available to them within a 30-minute drive. So, but the hub is very much here in Scottsdale, and the rec program, as I say, has been a huge part of our success over the years. And when we've put together these rosters, they're based on where you live, where you go to school, and so within that, you may get given a couple of kids on your team that are stud athletes, and if you've got that, you'll win most of your games this season. And if you don't have that, you will lose every game this season. It doesn't matter how good or bad a coach you are. That's just how it is at this age. These are the cards that you've been dealt, and you have to work within that. And sometimes we kind of beat ourselves up as coaches, particularly when we're losing, and we're spinning it through our head at night. How do I fix this? What do I need to do? And And on the flip side, the coach that's got the couple athletes is sitting back, smoking a cigar, thinking he's going to be the next Bruce Arena or whatever it might be. But it's at this age and this level, it's very little to do with coaching, honestly. It's just, do you have some athletes in your team or do you not? So we often ask coaches, hey, how's your season going? And almost always the reply is their wins-loss record. That's it. And this is the nature of sport, right? We especially in the world we live in now, where it's access all areas of Amazon All or Nothing series, where we see the inner workings of professional teams, and it's so easy to get caught up in that side of it, and then we forget that we're working with 6-year-olds, right? And so I think there's other things that you need to think about, because if your hand of cards is not great, it's going to be a long season if your focus is on your wins and losses. So what are the other things that you can think about that are more bigger picture life lessons that you can teach your kids? And around the top of the room here, you'll see these are the 6 core values that we came up with for our competitive teams that we emphasize regularly with the kids on those teams, and use these as kind of teachable moments of bigger picture life skills that they're going to need as they go through high school, college, and beyond. So, these are some things that you maybe want to think about ahead of the season starting. And there are also things that I would combine with thinking about coming up with your own coaching philosophy. Why are you coaching? What are your goals for the season? Do you have any team rules that you want everybody to abide by? And I think it's really important that you figure that out first of all, and then you communicate that to your group of parents. And the reason I say that is, if you're upfront with that at the start of the season, then nobody can come back and have a pop at you halfway through the season because they think their kid's not getting enough playing time, or their kid should be playing forward, or whatever it might be. I think you really help yourself as a coach by laying it out at the start of the season. Maybe it's a meeting after one of your practices and you just give a little introduction. Here's who I am, here's what I'm all about. Half our kids go to the same school. I don't know much about soccer, but I've done a little bit of research, and here's how I'm going to approach the season. And at the end of the day, you're the people who stepped up to volunteer, and the other parents did not. So it's how you say it's going to be. There's some stuff up there to think about. I mean, in particular, I think the playing time and discipline thing is a really good thing to be upfront with your parents about ahead of time. Inevitably, you may have one or maybe 2 kids in your team that are maybe not as focused, or maybe tendency to act up and misbehave a little. So how are you going to handle that? It's a tricky one, right? It's somebody else's kid. It's hard enough coaching your own kid, and then somebody else's kid wants to act up. So maybe you have a rule where, hey, if 3 strikes and you're out, and you sit out for 5 minutes, and if you are upfront with your group of parents that's how you're going to approach it, I think that will save you a lot of issues. The 24-hour rule thing we put at the bottom there, we have that rule with the competitive team parents, whereby we say, listen, more than happy to discuss your kids and their progress and their development at any time, but I will not do it immediately after the game. Emotions are invariably running high in the heat of the moment, especially if it's been a tough loss, and the last thing that you want to do is have a conversation with a parent in a parking lot about why little Johnny didn't get much playing time. Nothing good will come of that conversation in that moment. So we always say to our parents, just wait 24 hours, go sleep on it, and if you still feel really strongly you want to talk, absolutely, let's meet for a coffee, come into the office, phone conversation, whatever it might be. I don't think at the recreational level in 1st and 2nd grade you're going to run into this terribly much, but it's just a suggestion and an idea, particularly if you get a sense after your first couple of practices that there's a couple of overly competitive dads that might be in your face a little. This is not a bad rule to have, and say, listen, wait 24 hours, sleep on it. And we would say the same thing. We were talking in the meeting before, Simon alluded to the fact that sometimes we get emails from coaches and we can see the timestamp in the email, and then we're looking at the game schedule, they're sending the email like midway through the game, that they're outraged or incensed by some other coach and what they've done. We would urge you, we obviously want to be made aware of any poor behaviour or any incidents, but in general, it's always best just to go sleep on it. And if you still, the next Sunday morning, you're still feeling upset about what happened, in the cold light of day, let us know, and then we'll address it. You got anything to add on that side?
No, just that we do want to know. We're not trying to discourage you from reaching out to us. We want to know if things happen. We want to know if you feel you have a suggestion, you have something you want to tell us about. But yeah, it's strange when you get emails like you didn't even get to your car before. I'm getting like all caps emails about second grade soccer. Come on, man, I know you just got pumped like 10-0 by some team and their coach is obnoxious and real loud, and I get it. But like, man, go home, have a cold beer, I don't know, do whatever, and then be like, full breath, and then, maybe the next morning, Sunday morning, have your coffee, and then, just have a little perspective. But we do want to know if there's somebody, and if it's one of your own parents, if it's somebody else, another coach, we want to know, because I enjoy confronting the A-type personality. I do, and because the first thing they always say to me is, I'm just so competitive, and I go, okay, I don't care, but these are kids playing soccer. Yeah. So we do want to know, so please tell us, but just try to take a couple of breaths before you tell us.
Any questions on any of that? Make sense? So as I alluded to these on the top of the room here, these are the things that we focus on. And part of this came about, just to give you the backstory, on with our competitive teams, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, we sort of, all the pro staff got together and we thought about, what do we want a Phoenix Rising team to look like when they're seniors at high school? What skills do we want them to have? How do we want them to play tactically? And how do we want them to conduct themselves as young adults on the field? And we thought, we want people to be able to watch an older Phoenix Rising team, and if there was no badge, people will be able to watch from afar and be like, that's a Phoenix Rising team. I can tell by the way they act, the way they play, and the skills that they have. So with that being our end goal, and listen, we want, as a club as a whole, we want to offer a potential pathway for any children who love soccer and may want to go and play college soccer. But that's a very small percentage that will do that, tiny percentage. And an awful lot of kids will be done by the time they hit high school. So that pathway is not for everybody. We want all kids to be able to come and experience soccer and enjoy their experience playing soccer, whether that's for 2 seasons, 4 seasons, 6, whatever it might be. But when we looked at that end picture, what does it look like? We then developed what we call our technical plan, which is essentially a curriculum. We said, if this is the end picture, let's go back to what do we need to focus on when they're 15, what do we need to focus on when they're 10, 9, 8, 7, to get to this end picture. So we have an entire curriculum of activities that all of our pro staff do with their teams, these core values you see around the room that we focus on with that end picture in mind. So it's a journey over many, many years to get to that point. And not all kids will play all the way through their senior year, but hopefully a lot will. So that's where a lot of this stems from. These are some guidelines for success. I'll let you quickly read that. As I say, I'll send this out anyway. This one, you probably can't read it, but as I say, this will go out in a PDF and you can read it, but the essence of this one is really more surmised in this slide. And it's the progression of how each age group goes from your first and second grade. So your guys are playing 4v4. Once they get to third grade, they'll move to 7v7 in a bigger field with a bigger goal, and they'll have goalkeepers. And then once they hit fifth grade, they'll move to 9v9. Now, what we should say is this is not a Phoenix Rising idea or even a US soccer idea. This is a worldwide, the top countries in the world who are renowned for producing unbelievable soccer players, whether that be Spain, Brazil, Belgium, France, wherever it might be. This is what they do. And in the US and my home country of Scotland, we were very guilty of, we were in such a hurry to get to 11v11, which is the adult version of the game. back in, 20 years ago, when Simon, you grew up here, you were playing 11v11 when you were 8 years old, right?
Oh, for sure.
And when you think about it, it's kind of insane. That's the adult version of the game, and we've got little kids, running around this massive field. What we've learned over the years, and from a coach education standpoint, when we looked at the countries that are producing unbelievably skilled soccer players, like Brazil, for example. So what are those kids doing when they're young? And they're playing in small-sided little games, 3v3, 4v4, 5v5. They're constantly involved in the game. They're constantly touching the ball. There are countless opportunities to dribble, pass, shoot, defend. And statistically, they've done research on this. If you compare how many times you touch the ball in 4v4 versus 11v11, you get like 20 more opportunities in 4v4. So it's when we talk about at this age, the focus is on perfecting technique and the repetition. 4v4 is perfect for allowing kids the opportunity to practice, repetition, constantly involved. There's an awful lot of our coaches that are in a big hurry to get from 4v4 to 7v7. We're ready. We need the big goal. We're past 4v4. And I would call BS on that, because anytime I watch one of our 4v4 games at Rec, I rarely see a team that can connect 4 or 5 passes in a row and score a goal. So if you can't do that in 4v4, what makes you think you can do that in 7v7? So I think we just need to pump the brakes a little bit with that one, understand and trust the process of how we develop skillful players, and we don't need to be in a hurry to get to the bigger field. And so that's the kind of theory and logic behind it. As I say, it's not a Rising thing, it's not a US thing. This is the greatest minds in coach and soccer education all around the world all adhere to something along these lines. Any questions on that? No? So we are here to give you as much support as you need, or if you don't need any help at all, that's also fine. We'll not be offended in the slightest if you need zero help this season. But if you do need help, we're happy to do so and give you any guidance you may need. We'll send out various coaching ideas, lesson plans, video links to see fun games that are age appropriate to the age that you're coaching, help you out with that. Soccer is one of the few sports, as far as I know, where there is a coach education certification pathway that starts off with grassroots coaching licenses that you can do online, and you guys might be something you're interested in doing. They're pretty good, and then you can work your way through those licenses all the way up to doing the A Pro license, which coaches have to do in order to coach at the professional or college level. It's a heck of a journey, and I'm not, but some of you who are really into this, you may want to think about that. Certainly the grassroots level ones you probably find quite helpful. We used to, unfortunately, we're a little light in terms of pro staff. We just can't get enough qualified staff. That seems to be across the board, a lot of industries though. So we used to be able to send out pro coaches to, if you told us, hey, we practice on Thursdays at 5 at Thunderbird, can you send a coach out to help us with a practice? We used to be able to do that quite frequently. Unfortunately, we just don't have enough staff to do that now. But what we will start doing once the season gets underway, we'll do Sunday skills clinics and our pro staff will come out, and your kids are all welcome to come out and jump in, and they'll teach the kids and what have you. But if you, for example, if you felt you really needed some help with your team, if you want to bring your team out that Sunday, we'll have one of our pro staff do an age-specific session with your team and give you some guidance on here's why I'm doing this, here's why I'm doing that, here's how I progress it, here's how I would build on that for your practice next time around. So, but it's probably going to have, rather than us being able to send people out on a Thursday night, it's probably going to have to be Sundays. It's the only time where the pro coaches have any availability.
When did you say that was going to start?
The Sunday clinics will probably start early to mid-October. Somewhere around about then. We'll get that squared away once we get the season up and running. I think that's all for that. Just for your awareness, these are the other rec programs that we offer if your kids are really into it. So obviously we have our fall league, we have our spring league. We'll start these clinics, as I say, in October. The second one down, the All-Star program there, that is basically a 2-month taster of what competitive soccer looks like. So we'll have a tryout the weekend before Thanksgiving. We'll invite the best rec kids out. We'll pick the top 8 players in that age group to form an all-star team, and they'll go and play against other competitive clubs and teams. And the idea behind that is just a 2-month commitment for people who might be interested in going that direction at some point. And there's nothing wrong with not going that direction, by the way. If you just want to play rec the entire time, that's absolutely fine. It's just if your kid is really into it and they're particularly good and they're really passionate about it, that might be something you want to consider, and you get a little taste for it, and then you can make up your mind, do we want to make that jump to competitive soccer at some point or not?
What age does that start at?
That starts at under 7. So the only slight difference is maybe about 7 years ago, US Soccer made the decision to move age groups to birth year. And it's all connected to, they felt it was hindering their chances at under 19 and under 21 World Cups, because all around the world everyone else does birth year as opposed to grade. So US Soccer told all competitive teams in the country, you need to move to birth year. 7 years ago, it was a huge pain in the rear, but we made that switch. But on the rec side, we felt that most kids that play rec want to play with their friends, and most of their friends are in their class at school, so we didn't make that move to birth year. We've kept it school grade. But when you do all-stars, it is birth year. So on your first grade team, you might have some kids that are, what would their date of birth be? I don't know.
Yeah.
So you have a mix of 2015s and 2016s. So
What
that,
are we doing for all stars right now? Is it 2015s?
it'll be what was the earliest? 16s. 2016s will be the youngest one. Yeah, they'll be under 7s.
So it starts right away, I guess, but yeah, then like we could do that as soon as this year.
Mhm.
Okay.
What does that go up to? What?
It's 16s until 13s.
Well,
13s,
16 to 13
2016.
to 2013.
Yeah.
yeah, well, U7s, U8s, U9s, U10s. So it's four years worth. The Rising Stars program is a really cool little program we do in the winter for kids who you finish the fall and they want to keep playing soccer, and our spring league doesn't start till March. So it's like a 5-6 week program. You come out on Friday nights, the pro coaches are there, they teach them all kinds of skills. Sundays they come out, we split them up into teams and just play small sided games and coach them within that. So again, if any of your kids are really into it and want to keep playing, that's an option too. But if they want to take a break and come back in the spring or come back next fall, that's fine also. We just want to have an offering for kids that want to keep playing. Soccer Sixes is same deal as Rising Stars, except for older rec kids. That's all that is. So these are some of the general characteristics of the kids that you'll be coaching. Feel free to read through that and maybe read it in more detail when I send it out. But I think the biggest thing that you ought to consider when you're coaching this age group is, I think that the most common thing is people's expectations are too high of what they think they can teach these kids. And kids that are 6-7 years old are still very egocentric. It's a lot me. They're not going to want to pass. They're going to be reluctant to pass the ball, most of them. The notion of spacing out, some will get that and some will just not. They're just not there yet cognitively, and they're just going to chase the ball. So I think at this age group you can start to introduce a notion of team shape and spacing out, but you might be wasting your breath also. Some of them just depending on where your group's at. Some of them will get it, some of them just won't. So I mean, that's a pretty simplistic thing really to keep in mind. So any ideas that you've got about working on your offside trap or whatever it might be falling on deaf ears. Let's see. I think in terms of a good practice for this age group, an hour, maybe an hour and 15 is probably all you'll get, and that more than enough there. Our focus, like I said before, should be mostly on repetition technique. So you want to be doing activities where every kid's got a ball for pretty much all of practice, with the exception of maybe the last 15-20 minutes, where it's always fun to end with a scrimmage. That's why they love playing. Whether you set up cones or pug goals or whatever it is, and you play 3v3, 4v4 at the end. But most of your activities should probably involve players either having their own ball at their feet, or maybe it's sharing a ball in pairs, pair type activities. But anything more than that, you're unlikely to have terribly much success. I think at this age, we just had the pre-K and kindergarten coaches in before you guys, and even at this age, I think it's very applicable, and we'll send you some video links we can check out on YouTube. Think of fun themed games. Maybe it's a cartoon that your kids are into, and think of the characters within that cartoon, and can you, rather than just doing a drill and you see a dribble to that cone, turn around and come back when I blow my whistle. It's kind of mind-numbing, right? And if you are able to put a theme on a game, it will engage the kids. Their attention span will be much more increased. When I was coaching younger kids, when I was a little younger, my go-to was Shrek for obvious reasons. So every game that I had was stuck in Shrek's swamp, or Free Princess Fiona, or something to do with Donkey or Puss in Boots, and the kids get caught up in thinking we're setting Princess Fiona free from the castle, but actually they're working on foot skills and dribbling through those cones and doing that same drill, except it's dressed up as a themed game. That I think you'll find you'll get a lot of success from that. Kids will get really into it and enjoy it. You want to add to that?
I will guarantee you will have a much more successful, much more engaged practice if you avoid these three things at all costs. Kids standing in lines, kids running laps, and lectures. I mean, you just can't sit down and talk to first and second graders. All right, everybody sit down, we're gonna take 20 minutes, we're gonna talk about this. You know, it won't work. Just a couple of little coaching points, move on. Do it something for 5 minutes. If it doesn't work, abandon it. Move on to the next thing, you know. Maybe try it again some other practice, but don't kick it. And lines, I see this, and you're gonna see this the first games you show up next Saturday. You're gonna see a line of players with a soccer ball. You're gonna see a coach standing in front of the ball, the goal. Player's gonna pass the coach the ball, he's gonna touch it, the second player's gonna go score. And you're just gonna see this line. So the kids touch the ball twice, the coach touches the ball like 150 times. Who's getting all the touches? Who's getting all the repetition? The coach standing here making, his passes are getting much better. You know, it's by the third week, coach has got it down. But the kids are just touching the ball twice. So like, do something different where you're not the one touching the ball with them. Like, don't have kids standing in line, even if they're having their own ball. Or if there has to be a line, which some things you do, make it 2 different lines. So they're only in line for just a minute, you know, and you're moving through it. I know this sounds, you know, simplistic, but yeah, avoid lines, laps, and lectures. I mean, there's no first grade or second grade, there's no fitness component. There isn't. The science tells us that there's no fitness game for kids running laps in first and second grade. 0. And as punishment, I don't think it's a good punishment either. Make a kid sit out while you're doing something fun, you know? Make a kid sit down, running laps, whatever. And lectures, just don't.
On that note, to validate that, we were lucky enough to get the sports science guy from Manchester United came out a couple of years ago and chatted to the pro staff. He told us that Manchester United, they don't even touch fitness until the kids have gone through puberty. He said, before puberty, waste of time. There's nothing to be gained. There's nothing to be gained from it. So that's coming from, you know, one of the top clubs in the world.
Where was this when I was younger?
Right, exactly. And here, I think that's the thing. I think it's very the tendency for us is to coach the way that we were coached when we were kids. But I do think that we were coached when we were kids is pretty prehistoric now. And it's easy to default to that and go into that drill sergeant, you know, burpees and laps, but you don't need to do it. Kids don't respond to that at all. It's just miserable for them. And there's so many other ways that we can make practices engaging, fun, get their attention and make them love it, as opposed to, as I say, that. And with all due respect to any football people in here, when I see football dads doing practice with kids, I'm like, wow, that looks miserable. I mean, they're just standing doing burpees like for the whole practice with our massive helmets on. But I don't know. I think soccer's come a long way, and the way that we recommend you coach kids has evolved a lot. And this, especially, you just got to keep in mind they're 6, 7 years old. We hope this is the start of a journey where they fall in love with the sport and want to keep playing.
Is there any need to stretch and do anything like that?
Probably again, pre-puberty, probably not.
Yeah.
The only thing is, it's
If it's part of your practice routine, like, hey, we all get together, we're gonna do and you can talk while they're doing stretch, or you just, hey, we're all gonna jog around. There's a bunch of activities you can do that are warm ups too, stretches that are much better because again, kid touching the ball, doing all these things. But if you want to kind of primer them, it's not a bad idea.
yeah, it's not to get into the habit of here's what's going to come as you get older. But what I would say is also what is considered now prehistoric. The sports scientists tell us that static stretching, where you stand in a circle and do this for 10 seconds and then change to a different one, no one in soccer does that anymore. Everything is what they call dynamic stretching. So it's high knees, it's butt kickers, it's opening the gates, it's stretches on the move. And we've got a bunch of videos we can send you on that are really good for just if you want to do a little 5-minute kind of get the blood pumping type thing. But it is all stretching done on the move. There's no standing around holding a stretch. The sports scientists actually tell us that that's what you should do at the end of a game. And if you watch pro teams, that's often what they'll do at the end of a game is the static stretching. I think we covered most of the stuff up here. As Simon said, I think we got very caught up in we want to impart so much help and information to the kids, but their attention span is still fairly limited. And after the conclusion of a game, 6, 7-year-old kids have forgotten the scoreline, forgotten the game, and they just want ice cream. They've moved on. And we are lying in bed that night, tossing and turning, should have done this, should have done that, should have made this sub then, and we're torturing ourselves. At the end of a game, hey, high fives, great job, we'll see you all practice next week. That's honestly all you need. If you do want to try and help them a little bit with tactical kind of stuff and introduce the notion of spreading out, these types of things are great. I think most kids are visual learners if you show them stuff on something like this. But you don't even need this. You can just grab 4 cones and put them on the ground and say, hey, if the ball's in this part of the field, where would be a good place for you to go? That kind of thing. So I think kids respond a lot to the visual aspect of that rather than you trying to tell them about a shape or what have you. So some key rules of the 4v4. So you guys all, pre-K and kindergarten coaches are allowed to go on the field and help their kids. In 1st and 2nd grade, we ask that you stay off the field. There's a ref on the field. And if the only reason you would be asked to come on the field is if one of your players got hurt, which doesn't happen very often at this age. But there's no offsides, there's no throw-ins, there's no yellow cards, red cards, shouldn't be any need for that at this age. No slide tackles yet. Just put the ball on the ground and pass it in.
No throws.
No throw-ins, no. The key rules for 4v4 for you to be aware of is, if we imagine this, when it's a goal kick, so say the ball's here. When it's a goal kick, the other team have to be in their own half. And the rationale behind it is we want to get away from the old school way of you get a goal kick and you just launch it down the field and you hope that somehow you win the second ball and maybe the fastest kid gets a breakaway and scores a goal. Effective in winning games, of course, if that's the main focus is winning games, for sure you can do that. But we're trying to teach them how to play the game so that when they get to a higher level at high school, they know how to play the game. And that kick and run stuff won't work at high school. It'll work when they're middle school and younger. The strongest athletic kid will get to the ball first and score. but you're doing them a little bit of a disservice if you rely upon that. So what we want to get away from is just launching a goal kick down the field and it's a crapshoot who gets the ball. So the other team got to retreat to the halfway line, with the idea being that maybe you've got two players that go out here, one player stays nice and high, and hopefully the nice simple pass is there, and it buys them just a couple of seconds before, because what will happen is there will be an onslaught come from midfield as soon as the goal kick is taken. But at least it gives this kid a couple of seconds to control the ball, pick their head up, and maybe think about trying to play a pass down the line to this player, for example. So that's all where, it's a little frustrating when I watch 4v4 and it's a goal kick and I just see launch down the field. And it's just an absolute crapshoot if you keep the ball or not. What we want to encourage these kids to do is, can we string some passes together and advance down the field by passing or dribbling the ball, with the end result of being to stick it in the back of the net down here. And what, you know, you don't, as I said, what we'd love to get to the point doing, you should always be sort of saying to your kids, hey, can you go forwards? And if we can go forwards, we should go forwards. There's a good option to go forwards, because at the end of the day, we need to get the ball down here to score, and that's the name of the game. But if there is no good option to go forwards, like this picture right now, we'd love this player to think, you know what, I can't get through here. The best option here is to go back here and switch the point of attack, and this part of the field is wide open. But that takes a lot of courage for a kid to understand that it's okay to go backwards sometimes. And the purpose is, now we can go forwards. If we try and go forwards here, we're probably going to lose the ball. So here's the tough thing, of course. As you try and practice that in games, you will concede lots of goals, and it might cost you games. So are you willing to lose games for the bigger picture of allowing your kids to practice becoming better soccer players? That's where it gets a little tricky, right? But so that's goal kicks. And then the other always bone of contention would be this old chestnut. Let's say this is the picture here, and coach has told little Johnny just to park himself in front of goal and not let our team score. Now, we've got the ball, so if we have the ball, he should be up here supporting, so that if this kid finds this situation and he's got no option to go forwards, maybe he can go back. But if little Johnny's parked back here, he's disconnected, he's completely out of the game, he's not even involved in the game. So if we're talking about having these 4v4, having kids actively involved in the game all the time, you should be encouraging your player to step up here. But don't get me wrong, if this player steals the ball, it might not be a bad idea for him to retreat and try and block the goal and make sure the kid can't score. You're not going to let the other team score, right? You're trying to stop them score. Where this gets contentious every year is coaches say they're playing a goalie. They're not playing a goalie. A goalie would use their hands. So as long as he's not using his hands, he's not a goalie. He's a defender who's just stuck in front of the goal. There's no rule to say you can't do it. So if you come up against a coach and he or she decides that they're going to do that, whatever. We're not going to lose sleep over it. To me, it doesn't make sense, because in this scenario, the attacking team are playing 3 versus 4. They're playing a man down. It doesn't make sense to do that. Why would you not play 4v4? If he steps up, now it's a fair fight. But by having him is dumb, really. But this is always a contention with 4v4, first and second grade every year. I wouldn't get too caught up in it. Some coaches will deliberately do it. Some coaches, here's the thing, some players at this age will have a natural inclination to protect the goal. And so sometimes you're so caught up in coaching what's going down here, you don't even notice that this guy's back here. Another coach is all bent out of shape because you're playing a goalie, but you just didn't notice. So every week we get arguments about this, and let's relax. It's all good. That's the premise behind it. Hopefully, yeah.
Are we doing court kicks?
Yeah. So if regardless if it goes out here or out here, if it goes out here, it's a kick in from wherever it went out, and if it goes out here, it would be a kick in from the corner.
Is there a reason why you're not teaching throw-ins at this age?
Well, yeah, I mean, if we were to do throw-ins, we would probably waste about half of every game getting the technique right. And what they always do, they lift their back leg up, it's a foul throw, and we've got to retake it. And we want the ball in play as much as possible so that they're actually playing. And so a throw-in is, well, it seems a simplistic technique to us, it's a struggle for some kids. Also, it's a ball that's being launched from up here, and now the ball's bouncing around, it's whacking off shins, it's out of bounds again, it's another throw-in, and we end up wasting valuable time that could be better spent on dribbling, passing, shooting, scoring goals. So again, it's part of that progression of, okay, 7v7, third grade, now we'll introduce throw-ins. At this age, the focus is all about technique, dribbling, passing, scoring goals. So that's the rationale behind that. Brief summary of how you might have a successful season, hopefully. Here's a little fun video. Some of you maybe seen this before. This happened at one of our rec games 4 or 5 years ago. And it actually made America's Funniest Home Videos. Went viral, and it's... So it's a belter of a clip, and it's the same kid who drills 3 different kids.
Getting Green, the baby-faced assassin,
Yeah.
was just picking them off one at a time. You know, here's that kid, there's that kid. How about that kid?
More.
So the reason I show this is partly because it's funny, and partly this is the kind of stuff you can expect to see on Saturdays. So any notions we have of watching Barcelona style soccer out at Cachis, it's not going to happen. This
That's
is
a
more
third
likely.
grade game, by the way. That's
That is what you'll see. Stuff like that happens. Nobody was hurt in this, and so because nobody was hurt, it is funny. Laugh. It's all good, right? This is kids playing soccer. Don't keep it in perspective. Quick success story for you. This young lady's her name is Kelly Hitchcock. She went to Chaparral High School. She's now off playing college soccer somewhere in Illinois. The reason I put Kelly up there, I think she's a great poster child for our club. She grew up right next to Cachis where you play. Her mum and dad sat in this room just like you, maybe 12 years ago, volunteer rec coaches. She's got a twin brother, Alex, and her older brother, Max, all played rec soccer. They all then, Kelly became an all-star when we first started All-Stars. She got really into it. She then she started off on the third string competitive team, moved up to the second team, moved up to the first team. By her senior year, she was playing in regional national events and a highly recruited college player. What I loved about Kelly is multi-sport athlete, played lacrosse for Chaparral High School. Everything I read suggests that multi-sport athletes is the way to go. Focusing on one sport at a young age is not healthy. And then the other great thing, Kelly and her brothers, whenever they weren't playing soccer, they'd be at the fields refereeing. So this is not the pathway that for everybody, of course, but hopefully I think she's a great example of a kid who started in rec, worked her way through, played lots of sports, gave back to the club, and what have you. So maybe some of your kids follow that journey too. In terms of the season ahead, game schedules we're working on, and we'll hopefully have them finished in the next few days. All I can tell you is most people don't realize how complicated game schedules are, and it's a real, we in all the years that we've been doing this, we cannot find a software program that can handle exactly what we needed to do in terms of the game schedule, and with the amount of teams, the amount of fields, the amount of locations, the amount of coaches that coach 2 or 3 rec teams. So we can't have a kindergarten, if he's coaching a kindergarten team, a first grade team and a 4th grade team. How do we maneuver that around to make sure everybody gets one game a weekend, hopefully no bye weeks, hopefully no double headers. All these factors, we just can't find a program that can deal with it. So we get the framework for the schedule, but then we have to manually go in and maneuver everybody around, especially the multi-coach teams. And then unfortunately, once you put out a game schedule, it's really problematic to change it. It's so tough. The guaranteed somebody doesn't get the memo, or and our worst nightmare on a Saturday is 3 teams showing up at the same time in a field, or 1 team showing up and nobody's sure what happened. So I'm not looking for a sympathy vote or anything on it. I'm just trying to explain that the game scheduling is tough, and we do our best, and hopefully we'll have it out in the next couple of days. What we'll probably do, and Simon leads the game schedule, so I'll let him explain it. But
What we're gonna send you is probably the first 3 weeks.
Yeah, I sent that last night.
Okay,
I
so
sent
the first 3 weeks.
I sent the full schedule, but the 3 weeks, or first 3 weeks are locked in. Week 4 and beyond will be changed. But just the first 3 weeks, just get those out to your families through VIGA, and just get those first 3 games in.
So we input those in
Yes,
that app
yes,
ourselves?
yes.
Okay, gotcha.
You guys don't put those in the app?
And what I'll tell you about putting stuff in your app is if you're gonna put anything on your calendar, make sure it's on your team calendar in VIGA. We've already had a couple of times where all of a sudden if you start seeing events, you're like, I have no idea what this 4th grade team, it's cause they put it in a different section, like the coaches section, and then it goes out to every coach, so you don't need, Smith's 4th grade girls soccer schedule, like, I got my own. So make sure if you do anything, you do it in your, team page. VIGA is a new system for us, it's new for you guys, we're all sort of learning. We think at some point we'll be able to push schedules out through VIGA, but we don't have it down yet. We don't wanna start sending stuff out until we're sure we can get it right. So we're working with VIGA to get it where we can build it and push it out, and it'll probably land on your calendar, or we'll be able to push it straight to your teams. Right now, that isn't happening. As far as, and the question will happen, and it will come up, moving games, rescheduling games, it doesn't happen. We can't, there's no way to do it. But what I will tell you is that Justin will give all the 1st grade boys coaches, all the 1st grade girls coaches, everybody's contact info, your email, name. If I've got a game with you and my team can't make it because all of them are in, the choir practice on Saturday or something for that particular Saturday, what we should do is that age group, reach out to all the other coaches in that age group, and I should say, hey, my team can't make it Saturday at 9 a.m. Can anybody swap with me? I'll play your 2 o'clock game. Can you play my 9 a.m. game? Because at the end of the day, we don't care who's playing each other. Just that game happens at 9 a.m. because we have a referee there, we have a field available. So just make that internal swap, keep us in the loop so we know, let your parents know if that happens. That's the only way we can sort of reschedule games, is to just work with each other. And that also takes care of some other things too. Hey, I'm short 4 players for this game. Hey, 1st grade girls coach, does anybody have, a game, at 9 a.m., my game is at 10. Does any players want to stick around and play a second game? Do you want to, or talk to the other coach that you're playing against? Hey, I'm short 4 players, can I borrow a couple of your kids? And just have the kids, swap and play on both teams. Yeah.
And that outreach can be done through the app, like I can send out something to everybody in this room.
What I do with I have 3rd grade and older, or all the teams I schedule, so I literally write a separate email to those coaches and give them all their contact information. I don't know how our divisions are set up in VIGA that I could reach out
It's a
to.
goal for you. So there is a recreational coaches tab you can click, but that's gonna do every rec coach in.
Yeah, so
So it's not, we haven't figured out how to do just a 1st grade girls grouping, a 1st grade boys grouping yet.
I suspect it's in there.
Yeah.
We're just, as we're.
we've asked VIGA to come up with, to give us, figure out how do we get the ability to do that. And I think there's some stuff that they're still working on, but hopefully we'll get to a point where it will be easy to do that.
Yeah.
For now, it might be best just to send an email.
So where do you find that email then?
I will send it out.
He'll send you the email that's got, hey, here's all the 1st grade boys coaches, here's all, and he'll send an email to all the 1st grade girls coaches. And I find that's the easiest way. And once you guys have been here for a couple of years, and hopefully you'll be back, you begin to sort of know each other, and you begin to see the same faces and names, and you just reach out and go, hey, Tom, can anybody cover my, 9 o'clock game? And, oh yeah, we'll swap over this week and we'll, take your regular schedule back. But we can't move outside of that framework of games we have put in place. It is, Neil sort of put it mildly, it is shocking that none of the hundreds of scheduling softwares that can handle, because nobody has a rec league that has coaches that coach across age groups, coach across genders, have specific times and field spaces allotted, have referees, field spaces allotted do 11-week seasons, sometimes have doubleheader games because scheduling software can't figure that out. And so if your team had played 2 doubleheaders, for example, when you've played your 11 weeks at week 9, you get dropped off the schedule because you've already played 11 games. You know, it's shocking. And I know some of you are in your heads going, I've got an Excel spreadsheet that can do this. I know it. Send it to me. I promise you, I have no emotional connection to like how this happens. It's the bane of my existence. So, please.
And the other thing on schedules to make you aware of, we will keep track of the score lines as we go through the season. And on that, and I should have mentioned before, you know, games are fun when they're tight and they're competitive and both teams feel like they've got a chance. So blowout games are not much fun for anybody. So if you're slacking somebody 12-0, it's a miserable, humiliating, embarrassing experience for 6 and 7-year-olds to be involved in a game like that. And it even gets boring for the kids that are scoring all the goals. At some point, okay, I've scored 5 goals today. At some point, it's not as enjoyable as a competitive game would be. So there's nothing wrong with if you feel like you're handily beating a team, and I would say once it gets to like 5-0, I'd be saying to Simon, throw on your 5th player. Let's even this up a little. Let's make this a game. Do I care if I win a 4v4 game of soccer or not? Not really.
And the other thing too is, you know, maybe little Johnny scored 5 goals in the first 7 minutes of the game. Maybe this is a game where little Johnny doesn't play as much as he normally plays. Maybe little Johnny can kind of, you know, and you talk to little Johnny like, hey Johnny, it's 10-0.
Yeah, there's a number of things we as coaches and adults can do to diplomatically manipulate a game. You could tell your players, hey, you know, you're 7-0 up. Hey, you can only score your weaker foot now. So now your kids they're still learning and being challenged, but they can't take a shot with their stronger foot. And so it just evens up the game a little. Your kids still get challenged, but the other team are not getting humiliated. We don't need to be doing that for young kids. So there's nothing wrong with throwing on an extra player or 2. It's no big deal. So if you want to do that, chat with our coach and make that happen. We do that on the competitive side all the time with the younger age groups. It's very fluid. We just if we see a game is mismatched, all right, the other team is going to add a couple of players. It's fine. Now within that, when we keep an eye on your score lines, we will start to get a picture of who got dealt the great set of cards at the start of the season, all the stud athletes, and who did not. And so what we will actually do for the last 2 weeks of your schedule, beyond Thanksgiving, we'll try and match up all the strongest teams to play against each other and all the weakest teams to play against each other. That's not with the intent of creating a championship game. It's more with the intent of, if we know that this team has lost every game this season, why would we have them play the strongest team on the very last day of the season and get beat 20-0, and that's their last memory of the season was getting annihilated, versus there's another team who've lost every game this season. Let's have them play each other on the last day, and suddenly everyone's like, wow, we've improved so much.
So you're saying it's our way to manipulate their experience, so it seems like they like this already.
But that is what we'll try and do, just so that hopefully it's a better experience for all the kids that are playing. Very rarely do we have issues with the weather in terms of rain, but we are, whether the fields are open or closed is determined by the City of Scottsdale. If they close the fields, and they'll really only close the fields if there's standing water in the fields, they would contact us and we would instantly send out an email. So as soon as we know, you will know. If you don't hear anything from us, that means the fields are open. This is the city rain line number. That's essentially, if we wake up on a Saturday morning at 6 AM and it's coming down, rarely here, but that's the number we would call and find out are the fields open or they closed. So feel free to call that yourselves.
We play when it rains. You parents, there'll be a gray cloud in the sky and you'll be getting emails from parents. Are the games on today? Kids are not made of sugar. We play in the rain. It's not baseball, if there's any baseball people. We play in the rain. Yeah. The only time they close fields again, like you said, standing water, the fields, trying to protect the fields, or if there's lightning, the city won't close the fields, but we will tell you, if you see lightning, we need to be off fields. We don't need anybody getting hurt.
Yeah. Last thing, our club registrar, her name is Polly. She will be reaching out at some point with a background checker that everybody has to do every year. There's also a concussion course that everybody, the coaches, whether it's ourselves, yourselves, have to do. You guys, once you've done it once, you're good. You've got your concussion certificate to say you've done that course. But the background checker has to be done every year. So expect to see that drop into your inbox at some point. In terms of game day, Cachis, Simon and the guys are there super early setting things up. They will set up the 4v4 fields, the goals, except the nets will get dropped in the middle of the field. If you've got the first game of the day, the expectation would be you just put the nets in the back of the goals. If you've got the last game of the day, it's appreciated. We have to drag those goals all the way to the perimeter fence. Simon, Pierre, Dante, whoever's there will probably come around and say, hey, you're the last game.
Yeah, we'll let you know. We'll let you know how to do it. And the goals are aluminum. They're this big. You literally, and if you're coaching, assign that duty to one of your parents. Hey, Tom, I'm coaching the team. You're dragging one of the goals, and we show everybody where to put them. It's very simple. The perimeter fence to Coach Eats is right here. Here's where your all of first and second grade games are. So the fields are all out here, and it's just dragging the goals 40 yards, over to the fence. And then we have to go back and lock them up every night. But it's not a big deal. It's super easy. Invariably, though, the way schedules work out, you'll be the last game of the day like 4 weeks in a row. You'll be like, but again, assign that to somebody on your team. You're doing the hard work. They can put a net in a bucket and drag an aluminum goal, 50 yards. It's not a big deal.
Last thing up here is referees. This is Peter Burns sitting in the corner here, is our referee assigner. And so he schedules referees for all of our games. There is a massive referee crisis in Arizona, huge shortage. We can't get enough referees. Kids will do it for a season or two and then they quit because we yell at them. And they're like, this is not worth my time to show up on a Saturday morning and get some 40-year-old dude yelling at me, talking to me like I'm an idiot. So it's a massive problem. We're having to cancel games because we don't have referees. And all of the clubs in the Valley got together recently, and because of the referee crisis, they basically told all clubs with rec programs, the consensus of them was you don't need referees for 4v4 games. The priority should be 7v7, 9v9, 11v11. We went to bat for our rec coach and we said, listen, we feel that on the competitive side, 4v4, we don't need referees because those are professional coaches who know the game. But our rec parents often, they really need that help with 4v4 games. So we fought to keep referees on our 4v4 games despite pressure to not have referees for those games. But the way we've gone about it is we've basically, the referees you will have will not be fully licensed referees that have done the 12-hour course that you need to be a certified referee. They will be high school or middle school players that play in our competitive teams. And we've brought them in for an hour's training. They know the game because they're all playing at a pretty good level. These yellow shirts here, we're in the process of getting badges on them for those referees. But these are kids who are doing this to give a little back, earn a little cash when they're not playing games themselves. But absolutely do not yell at them, and try and befriend them and help them. Introduce yourself at the start, encourage them, they're learning. And unless we do something pretty abruptly to help our referees, we run the risk of having to have games with no referees, and none of us want that. That would be a real challenge if we're getting to the 77, 99 games and we're having to have random parents volunteer or whatever. So we need help with this. It's a kind of bad situation, and these, as I say, these are kids not much older than your own kids. They're out there, they're doing their best. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to make bad decisions. They're not going to blow their whistle loud enough. Get over it. It is what it is. Do you guys have anything to add on that?
I just have one thing to add to what Neil's saying. So last year, the single biggest comment or complaint that the coach would say is the ref never blew the whistle. So what you have to understand is if it's a brand new ref, she is petrified to blow, even though they were blowing them so loud at Rancho at the training, the first time they step there, they are petrified. So you could just nudge them rather than accusing them that they're not wrong. Because what you have to think about a 12-year-old girl or boy. If I blow my whistle, everybody's going to look at me, and it's the last thing that they want to do. Now, once they get over that little nudge, they're great. But that initial is pretty hard.
Well,
So I would ask you to just give them a nice little nudge. You're doing great. You're fine. Just blow it a little louder if you need to. That sort of nudging, rather than what they come back is they come back shaking because the coach was upset because they didn't blow the whistle.
And that is one of our biggest pain points when we've got children coming back to our referee tent in tears because they've just refereed a 7-year-old 4v4 game and some big dad coach yelled at them, "What are you doing? This is crazy." And think about if it was your kid, and maybe in a few years it is your kid. How would you feel if some big dude's yelling at them? Come on, we've got to keep perspective with this. So
2 points. First of all, one of the reasons, including that they're nervous to draw attention to themselves and now tell a bunch of grown-ups what to do, which is really hard, is number one, they're high-level players. Referees don't blow the whistle often in a soccer match. Ball goes out, team just picks it up, plays. It's a goal kick. No, there's another referee storming down there with a whistle. It's not a football game where there's a whistle every play. It's most of the time the referee's not blowing a whistle. So they've grown up in that where you just don't blow. It goes out of bounds. Both teams know it's out of bounds. One team picks it up. We play. So that's one of the reasons it's hard to get them to blow the whistle. So we don't always need them to blow the whistle. Most of the time the coaches want them to blow the whistle. It's because the kids won't stop playing because they're 12 yards out of bounds and they're still chasing the ball into the parking lot, Okay, well, maybe you should talk to your players about when the ball goes out of bounds, Like, there's not a whole lot of times we need a whistle.
Quintessentially, it's just a learning curve, and you as coaches and adults would be really helpful to help them. Once they get past it, they're great. It's just that initial step.
And the second point to that is how you behave will set the tone for how all of your parents behave. So I know I've been guilty of it when I first started coaching 20 years ago. I stormed up and down the sidelines and I was like a caged tiger, and I was just, even if I wasn't yelling, I was just tense all the time. And my parents would get tense. And coaching competitive teams, if I was really barky at matches, I could hear my parents, it gives them permission to be barky. If you're calm, if you're relaxed, and you talk to players, you don't need to yell. The field is not a whole lot bigger than the room we're sitting in. You don't, and number two, they can't hear you, they won't hear you, they're not listening to you. You don't need to yell at players the whole game. If you're calm and you're relaxed, your parents will be calm and relaxed. And so even if it's not coaches yelling at referees, it's parents, and even if they're not yelling at referees, if it's every time the ball goes, oh, oh, did you see that? These kids, the teenagers can hear that, and they're just like, oh my God. We paid them, all 3 of my 4 children have refereed in the league. One of them lasted a couple of seasons, one of them was 1 season, one of them made it a half a season. We're paying them $20 cash a game, no taxes, no nothing. You can't get them to come back because of grown-up monsters are yelling at them about 4v4 soccer, whatever, man. We have to find a way. And I think if you can be the example for all your parents, just be relaxed. It's okay. If it's 10-0, it's fine. If it's a competitive game, sure, we're a little more excited, but try to be calm. And if you can set that example, it works out better for the referees. Sorry.
all right, we are almost done. So how many of you have not collected your uniforms yet? Okay, perfect. So we'll go through the back after this. Get your uniforms. Uniforms come pre-packed from soccer.com, who have a factory in North Carolina. They work with Adidas, and we say we need 25 first grade boys uniforms. They send us a box in what they tell us are the sizes of your average first grade child. Scottsdale children seem to be a little bigger for some reason, but we would suggest you line up your team and you give the biggest jersey to the biggest kid and work your way down. Obviously, we don't want any child feeling embarrassed by a uniform not fitting properly, so we do have surplus that anybody can switch out on game day or right now if you would like to. If we happen to not have that size or colour, we can order it from soccer.com, but it might take a week to get here. But they'll come pre-packed, set of 8. If you only have someone on your roster, once you've handed them out, if you've got a spare one, it would be handy to have it back just in case somebody needs to switch that out. You'll get a coach shirt for yourself, and we can give one for an assistant coach if you have one. Coach equipment will give you some cones, some pennies, a ball. Obviously, if your kids give it to your kids, you can use it as a game ball if you want to, but you don't have to. Any ball is fine. And then we sell the pub goals for $60. They're quite handy for practice. Online, I think they're about $100. The club does subsidise them a little bit. You obviously no obligation to buy a set, but if you want to, they are quite handy. Let's see.
I feel like the airline attendant. Can't get the mask to drop. But no, these are great. I've coached for 20-some years, and I've used these pop-up goals for 44 teams all the way up to U19 teams. So yeah, they're fantastic.
Rosters, I'll let Justin chime in here, but essentially you should have your rosters by now. They're still, some of them are still a little fluid because you get a kid who you as coach obviously choose when you want to practice, and maybe that practice day conflicts with piano lessons and they can't play in your team. So Justin will then try and move that kid to another team that a practice day works for them. So there's still some moving pieces. There are, believe it or not, still some kids registering that want to play. So if we have a roster that maybe only has 7, we might offer them a spot on your team. We'd rather not turn anybody away that wants to play soccer, and we'll try and find some place for them to play. But you know, if for some reason a kid just cannot find a team that practices on a day that works or a location that works, we might have to refund them. But you know, every year over 2,000 kids, we might end up doing a dozen refunds. That's about it. Normally we find some place for them to play. But have you got anything you want to add on rosters?
No, I do the best I can to try to keep them at rosters of 8. Obviously, try to get them at the same school or people that they know. Obviously, it's not all going to be perfect. So usually when you set your practice up, I'll get an email saying, hey, they're practicing Thursday, I can't do it. I do the best I can to switch and then find someone to replace that spot. But obviously, it's not always going to be a perfect world situation. So keep looking at your rosters pretty much up until week 1, the first game's next Saturday, because there still will be some changes this week, I can guarantee that.
So that is pretty much all we've got for you. So we certainly appreciate you volunteering to coach, to say that you guys are what makes this rec league tick, and we hope you have a really fun experience. We hope your kids have fun, and we're here to help you. And we certainly appreciate you coming today. I mean, if we look at, well, we've got 20 people in the room here, it's probably only, how many coaches have you got in 1st and 2nd grade?
86, 87.
So it's just a relatively small percentage that have come along today. So we certainly appreciate your time. Hopefully the rest, we've got it recorded, we can send it out, and everybody can watch this video and be on the same page with information that we're trying to push out. But if you've got questions, we'll be here. You can feel free to stay behind and ask us. If you need to get your uniforms, if you want to go through there, you can.
Actually, what we should probably do is get in our cars, go around to the back.
That might be easiest if you want to load up your cars. Actually, is drive around the back and pull right up to the warehouse door. But otherwise, thank you for your time today. We appreciate it, and we'll see you out in the fields. Thank you.
Thank you.
Which Scottish team, the professional team?
Dundee United. Even terrible. They're awful.
Still a team.
But once you get stuck with your team, that's it.
My coach plays in Celtic.
Oh really? Well, we played them 3 weeks ago and they beat us 9-0.
They're on a run. They used to get terrible. How long is the game?
4 10-minute quarters. That's just 1 5 minutes, make yourself that 5
And then they have
minutes.
like a real like a halftime.
Yeah, so you pretty much have like a minute, 3 quarters, and like 2 or 4 minutes.
And there's down here,
Just keep your head down.
there's a rec center.
Do